Good, how are you?
We're up at Old Orchard Beach, by God.
Should I come by and scratch stickers?
Good to see you, man. We're going to call this meeting of the Laconia Planning Board to order at 6:33 p.m. Could we have a call of the roll, please?
Brett Bellevue.
Here.
Dave Broughton.
Here.
Charlie St. Clair.
Here.
David Bounds.
Here.
Gail Denayo.
Here.
Mike Della Vecchia.
Here.
Claudia Marchessault.
Here.
And Peter Burnett.
Here.
And with us tonight, we have Dean Trefethen, the planning director, and Brandy Laughlin, the assistant planner. And I, Robert Moore, will be doing the minutes.
Okay. And let's see, we're going to seat Mr. Bellevue tonight. Is there an opening for him?
Correct.
So let the record reflect that Mr. Bellevue has been seated as a voting member for this evening's meeting. If there's no objection, we're prepared to accept the minutes from the last month's meeting, which I did not attend. Hearing no objection, the meeting minutes from the previous meeting has been accepted. Okay, so, all right, so if there's anybody here for the Trailhaven project on Barbara Boulevard, okay, be advised that that's going to have to be continued to November because the notice to the abutters was not done properly and it has to be redone. And also, anyone here for 37 Layton Avenue? That matter is also going to have to be continued. They're later in the agenda, and I figured we'd save you guys the surprise for later and give you an opportunity to go home and catch something interesting on television. See you next month, sir. Okay. So I think that brings us now, Brandy, to 7.1, which is a request for extension from Aqua Vista, Meredith Bay, Mid-Rise, The Lodges, it's called. And that is PL 2010-0010 SP. Okay. Yes, David.
That's spelt wrong.
What is?
Aqua.
Oh, yeah, it's Auca. Yeah, Auca. You know, I do that with the month of October. For some reason, I always spell it October. It's just one of those things.
We'll make sure it's correct on the NOA. Thank you.
I guess we begin by hearing from the applicant.
I'm glad it wasn't me with the spelling mistake. That would be a problem.
Good evening, Chris Dupree on behalf of the applicant Aqua Waterfront LLC. For those that may not be familiar with this project, it's located on Scenic Road across from a townhome project that we initially started with. I think it was 2010 we received our first occupancy permit on the townhome buildings. At the time that we started development along Scenic Road, we permitted the townhomes and started construction of this project first. And then we pushed into permitting the lodges project, which are these buildings here and subject to the extension application. Part of the reason for the timing then was we had to extend the water about, I think it was about 1,800 feet overall to service the townhomes. Also, we had to bring the sewer up Scenic Road, and we had some sidewalk extensions that were part of the requirements at the same time. And so, you know, doing those for a 19-unit townhome project wasn't economically feasible, so we started the permitting of the waterfront site. Over the course of time, the project has evolved a little bit. We've acquired some additional land along Scenic Road. We reversed our order of thinking a little bit, where we then jumped in and built the Bluegill Lodge, which is similar to these buildings designed for the waterfront parcel. We started occupying that building in 2015. And then we were able to purchase a couple of abutters in between these parcels in this area here, and started some more townhome development. So we've been working our way back towards this parcel. It is the last open parcel that we own on Scenic Road, and we've been trying to work to time the market in terms of sales. The original building, we'd always said when we got to about 50% sold would be the time to start moving forward on the waterfront parcel, just because of the lead time to do the site work. We're at that point now. We haven't gotten there as quickly as we would have hoped, but we are there. We still have a supply of units in the Bluegill Lodge building. And we've been working with the contractor, Hutter Construction, that built the original building for us, you know, basically on some pricing and estimating and a little bit of value engineering to try to get the construction price down. And we've kind of gotten caught in this market cycle again, where labor's in short supply and the prices have gone up, and you know, it's a challenge that we're trying to work through. I was back in July to the zoning board. Zoning has been extended until January, so be back in front of the zoning board again. That's, as you know, every 6 months. And I think that's, you know, about where we sit today.
Thank you. Staff, be heard on this?
Good to go.
Okay. The request is for an extension. We granted an extension last year, I guess our records indicate. And it was extended for, to a date certain, which is October 2nd, 2018. So, good timing, I guess. Would anyone care to make a motion? Or, first of all, does anybody wish to discuss the application? I'm sorry. A request for extension? Hearing none?
So how long is the extension they're asking for, or you're asking for?
I would just, it's usually for 1 year,
Correct.
and it's every 6 months for the ZBA, so it sounds like the applicant has, you know, been trying to change the phasing of the development to meet the market demands, and so, does anyone have any other questions or wish to be heard? All right. Would someone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept it, giving him a one-year extension till
And-
2019.
And so what would the date be in 2019, October
we have a
2nd?
calendar.
The meeting is October 1st, the first Tuesday would be October 1st, so it's a Dean, you can do that.
So
Yeah, probably October.
would the movement care to amend the motion to include the date of October 1st, 2019?
Correct.
Okay. And again, this is in reference to, what is the number here? It's, original application number was PL 2010-0010 SP. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. St. Clair. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? We should do a show of hands, I suppose, thank you. The motion carries, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. It's the next one, the gardens? Winnipesaukee?
Yep.
All right. I have to go back and find that on my thing. Oh, no, this is Patrick Wood Law Office. Oh, before we do that one, I am told that you may be asking for a continuance on another one that was later in the agenda,
Yes, sir.
and that's the New Hope Drive.
Yes, sir.
So that was for those of you that are keeping score here, that is PL 2018-0080SU. It's number 10.1 on our agenda.
And that's requesting a continuance of that application acceptance hearing.
So it's just a continuance of the acceptance hearing, okay.
Correct.
And the reason therefore?
The reason for that request is that the purchasers are doing their engineering and their wetlands study. They're not at the point where they're able to finish the plans at this point, but hopefully they will in the next couple of weeks, so we'll have the plans ready for the November hearing.
Okay.
New Hope Drive, right?
New Hope Drive, yes.
And the staff's recommendation? And is there anyone that wishes to ask the applicant any questions?
Are we talking about the New Hope Drive? or
New
the-
Hope Drive, which is actually on your second page, it's 10.1, he's just moving to continue it. And we figured we'd move that up so that when he completes his next request, thank you very much, then he may go home.
How long of a continuance do we want?
Just 1 month right now, we'll just ask for November.
Okay. All right, would anyone care to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion
Claudia?
to go ahead and approve the extension till November.
Okay, to the November meeting, what date is that?
6th.
6th, okay.
November 6th.
That raises another
2018.
question that I
Is there a
have.
second?
It's election day.
Can I ask a question before you vote on that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
That's Election Day. Is that an issue for the planning board?
Yes.
It would be, actually, because the city hall is pretty much occupied by election.
Correct, yeah.
And some of
so-
the people that might attend this meeting might also have some jobs to do.
Have
That
to take
day.
signs down.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, this time, take your signs
I
down.
always take my signs down.
Or would it be a week later or a week earlier?
What shall we do on that? Staff recommendation?
You could move it
Can we move
to
it to
Tuesday
the-
the 13th or Wednesday the 7th.
Just, do you have access to the calendar for this room to make sure we got it?
Although, no, would that be city council on Tuesday, the 13th?
No, they're on the 9th. I'm sorry. They're on the 12th.
Well, that's a
No,
holiday.
They're on the 13th.
Could we do
They
Wednesday,
will be on the 13th.
just the next night?
No, thank you.
Apparently not.
Gail says no.
Absent.
You could do 13th.
Should either be celebrating
Do
the
Wednesday
election.
the 14th.
What can we do it on the 13th?
City council has a meeting that day.
No, so,
Yeah,
I don't-
council has a meeting.
Okay, so let's deal the motion that's on the floor, and we'll just say, to the next meeting, whenever it shall be. Do we have a second to
I second it.
Claudia's motion?
It'll
Okay,
be
seconded by
Monday.
Mr. Broden. Is there any discussion on the motion? Sensing none, all those,
Wait a minute.
what?
What date are we continuing into?
To the next meeting of the planning board, because they're still trying to work on when that date would be. We don't know exactly what the availability of this room is.
Okay.
So, he knows, he'll be here, he'll figure out which day it is, and I'm sure he'll be
Someone will let
here.
him know also.
Yeah, we'll let him know exactly when.
Now let's not tell them.
Well, that's not part of the motion, David, so. All right, does
Please?
anyone else, any other discussion on the motion? Sensing none? All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
Or raise your hand.
or raise your hand. Opposed? All right,
Thank you very much.
I only said raise your hand because we're on TV.
okay. Okay, we can wave to our parents and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
Okay, so
so
now,
that's been done.
thank you.
You're welcome. But it's not what originally brought you up here today, is it?
Again, Patrick Wood of Patrick Wood Law Office, representing Phoenix Capital, the developer of the gardens at Winnipesaukee. We're asking for an extension to October of 2019. I believe that would be October 1, maybe, or whatever that first meeting date is in October. The financing has taken a turn that we weren't anticipating, and so there's been some reason for delaying of the actual construction. So we would ask for an extension.
Well, this is October.
October of 2019, sir. Thank you.
Okay, October 2019.
And Attorney Wood, I'm the new guy on the board, so where is this project?
This project is on Route 11B, Endicott Street East, at the top of the hill. It's right across from the Public Service Company substation, just east of Rusty Bertholet's batting cages and the go-kart thing.
About two-thirds, half the way up the hill.
It's right at the top of the hill. It's at the very top of the hill, on the north side.
Opposite the White Oaks Road intersection.
Further north, or further east, I should say,
Okay. Further
toward Guilford.
Up the hill, all right,
Up the hill, right at the top of the hill, right.
Top of the hill.
all right.
And we have all of our state permits and our driveway permit. It's just a matter of getting this financing finalized so that we can hopefully move this thing on.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Is there a staff recommendation?
We agree with the extension.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Peter, you ready?
Yes.
We make a motion, we approve extending that Governor's Crossing.
Gardens at
No, no, no.
Sorry, Gardens at
Winnipesaukee.
Winnipesaukee.
Thank you.
You can do them all right now.
That's 04031.
4031 SP.
Right.
Thank you. For 1 year till October 1st, 2019.
Is it the first, right? Yeah, okay, October 1st. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
All right. Is there any discussion?
You read those numbers
You read the wrong
I
numbers.
read the wrong number?
Yep.
Oh, yes,
Want
I
the
did.
gardens.
Okay, applications PL 2017-002 CUP,
I did the same.
0123 CUP, and then 2016 0120 SP, 0120 SU, 0122 CUP, and to round it out, 0068 CUP.
Just a correction, it's 0121 SU.
Jeez.
0121 SU, yes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I'm just reading along here.
Okay, as referenced in the agenda, just to be clear. All right, any other comments or, all right, sensing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, and the
Thank you.
motion
Thank you
carries.
very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Okay. Back
Now Governor's
here,
Now you're on the right page.
am I? Am I on the right page? It looks like we're at 8 now?
Nope,
One
No?
more extension.
One more extension, I'm sorry.
not three.
Governor's Crossing.
7-3.
Oh, Governor's Crossing, yes, I'm sorry. Is there anyone here on the extension request for Governor's Crossing? Hello,
Hi, my name is Dick Latender, and I'm here to request an extension for another year for our project. We've, got quite a few homes, quite a few house lots in there, and the date for our permit was October this year. We'd like to ask for extension to October of next year, 2019.
All right. And is there, what's the reasonable likelihood that things will?
Well, based on the economy, this past year, since I was here last year, we've closed on 3 homes, but, the pricing of materials hasn't really caught up with the market, and it's a little tough out there. Also, we're getting some resistance. Not everybody wants to, unfortunately, certain people are taking Laconia. If you look at 1,000 feet up the street, we get into Guilford, tax rates there is 22% lower than here. If you go north a mile, the tax rate's 38% in Meredith compared to Laconia. That hurts the market a little bit, and the buyers out there are all pretty conscious, and sales have been a little slow.
Well, I wish we could raise the taxes in Guilford, but we can't.
No, I know. It's a fact. It concerns the market.
Right. Well, as long as some progress is being made, that's encouraging for us.
Well, since I was here last year, I think we've closed on 3 houses, and we're about to get a couple permits more for at least put foundations in. We're hoping to do mostly spec. We'd like to do more custom homes because of the market being so slow, but we're going to put a few in on speculation.
Right. All right. Well, thank you. I hope the market continues to improve. It's made some improvement, I understand, but I'm certainly not an expert on that. Staff recommendation on the extension?
Recommend the extension.
All right. Any questions for the applicant? Sensing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
I know this one.
Yeah, we've already done it, actually, by mistake.
So I recommend that we grant the motion for extension of 1 year to October 1st, 2019 for applicant 04031 SP.
Right, otherwise, the Governor's Crossing.
Governor's Crossing.
The project is called. Is there a second to Mr. St. Clair's motion?
Second.
I think when Mr. Belleville got in there before the buzzer there, Mr. Broughton, he's a little quicker on that. Any comments or discussion now that the motion has been made? Sensing none, all those in favor, please indicate your assent by raising your hand. And then opposed, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and good luck. We'll see what we can do on those taxes in Guilford, Meredith. Terrible thing. All right. Now we're at 8, I believe.
No, I think we're at 7-4. Extend.
There's another one?
Yes.
Yeah, Fletcher Lane.
Oh, my goodness. What list am I looking at?
The old, I believe.
Oh, that is,
There's a duplicate of the first one.
oh, that's a mistake. That is not an item on the agenda. Sorry, you guys, we might not have updated your printed agendas. So yes, now you're on to public hearings.
I think I'm looking
So
at,
we're at,
This is my new one.
Now you're at 8-1.
This is
Yeah,
the new.
because I don't have a 7-4 in this one.
these one.
the modified one only had 3 extensions on it.
They gave me,
So there was one we slipped in there, apparently.
You
'cause we
have
did
to
4.
bear with us. Kalina's out. Come on.
All right, now.
2 months in a row.
Yes. Well, I hear it's improving, so it will be good. I believe then, we are at 8. Continued public hearings, consideration, possible vote. And then the only item I see on the agenda is called Woodvale. It's PL 2018-0075 CUP, and it's a proposal to level the lot with fill within the 50-foot wetlands buffer. And we'll start by hearing from the applicant.
This is a public hearing, so if you could just open the public hearing before, please.
Having first opened the public hearing at 6:55.
Thank you.
Thank you. We would now like to hear from the applicant.
Good evening, everybody. Richard Holmesy, 46 Woodvale. Thank you for hearing me tonight and giving me the opportunity to speak before you all. This lot was originally part of the master plan known as Wentworth Cove Estates, adopted, drawn in 1971, and adopted in August of 1972. All these lots were approved and developed back in the day. What we're looking to do is make this lot usable, accessible. There was a access or curb cut before I bought the property on the street. From a matter of record that I see, back in the day when it was designed, there was no evidence that the wetland buffer was required. And then later on, a 25-foot wetlands buffer was required, and later on, a 50-foot buffer was required. Just a couple of points. So I'm not trying to redesign or reinvent the wheel, but the state of New Hampshire does not require a wetlands buffer in the Woodville zone. The city of Laconia does, but the state does not. The state of New Hampshire has been on the property from a anonymous call that I was filling in the wetlands, and they found out there was no violation at this time, and that letter's been turned into Evan from the planning department, and the conservation committee has it, and the proper people have, I believe, a copy of that letter, including Mr. Dean Treffernan. And Lot 4 on the plan and Lot 5 have been combined and purchased and put together as one lot now. And they've been approved by the city and adopted at the Registry of Deeds. The state of New Hampshire considers, from what I understand, and anyone here can correct me if I'm wrong, that this zone is not a prime wetlands zone. Because of that, they don't consider it habitable for wildlife, and they don't consider it, that's why they don't require a buffer. And I got that from the DES. In the last 2 years that I've owned the property with my business partner, Brian Iskey, who is not here tonight, Evan from your department has witnessed no erosion whatsoever on the property to date. Our plans show that we would like to come in 10 feet from the wetlands buffer at 50 feet, and we would like to fill in on the left and right side of what's called the old Lot 4. So the left side was looking from Woodville, the left side was 4, the right side was 5. Now it's known as Lot 4 or 46 Woodville, just to be clear. So the left side is what we would like to address, because that's where the curb cut was when we bought it. And we'd like to, there's 2 areas of wetlands on the left and right side. We'd like to put a very low grade, maybe a 2.5 foot or so retaining wall to retain our fill, if we are allowed to fill the area in. And we would like to work on our property, not in the wetlands and out of the 10-foot buffer of the wetlands. I'd like to make it 10 feet on the left and 10 feet on the right.
Right.
Okay? And I don't think at this point, where the state has what they consider this to be a non-usable wetlands, I don't feel that every wetlands area in the state of New Hampshire, or let's be concerned with the state of Laconia, should be deemed the same and have the same value or the same abilities or the same requirements. And at this time, I'm asking for a minimal variance necessary to utilize my property. So if I had developed it in 1972, when I was 7 years old, I wouldn't be standing here before you today asking for this permission. But I didn't have that money then. So, we'd like to utilize the property and make it a developable lot in its time. And we'd like to be able to access it better and bring the grade up so it's not as sunken in as it has been in the past. And all the plans show that we're going to leave our rainwater on our land and be less than the street grade, so our rainwater doesn't end up on the street and cause flooding out there, as there's no storm drains on the street. And that's my presentation at this moment, and I'd be glad to take any questions you might have for me, or suggestions, or anything you have.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Did the Conservation Commission have the information from the state of New Hampshire, that letter that you referenced, before they made their recommendations with respect to
This is not a prime wetland per the state of New Hampshire's definition. However, it is a wetland that a wetland scientist has identified, which is,
That's not my question. My question is, you referenced the letter.
I can answer that.
From the state of New Hampshire.
Yes.
The Conservation Commission has made a recommendation with respect to this, and they voted not to support the CUP for 46 Woodville Avenue Drive for 2 reasons. My question is, did the Conservation Commission have that letter you referred to before they made their recommendations?
Okay, so if I may, they had the letter that night, and they had the letter prior to. Evan had it, and Evan distributed it to everybody.
Okay.
But if I can go a little further, with regards to the Conservation Committee's recommendation, they are recommending board only, I'm understanding. If all wetlands were considered the same, with the same value, like I said, if it was a prime wetlands, then I can understand maybe why the Conservation Committee would not want to support it. But it's been proven, it's a proven fact that this is not a habitable wetlands. It's just simply wet. So that's, I think the Conservation Committee, with all due respect to them, they're not looking at it 100% clearly and separating this street from that street and so forth. They're only looking at it as wetlands. So I don't think I don't think it's perfectly clear or fair in this situation. Now, number one, it says they were against it because they didn't want to set a precedence for future wetland CUP applications of this nature. Well, that's like saying, if you approve of a variance for a 10-foot setback and a 5-foot setback instead of a 10, that means you're setting a precedence because you approve something. And I forget the person's name on the board of the Conservation Committee, but she says, "Oh, I don't want to get sued, so I'm going to do it for this reason." That's the wrong reason to do it. And as far as number two, the Conservation Committee is not comfortable with the amount of wetland buffer the application wishes to fill in. Again, that goes to an opinion, but it goes more to, I think, the fact that it's not prime wetlands. It's just not. And further down, all the recommendations from the Conservation Committee, I've already given those to them. Those were already my suggestions, part of my presentation. So they're not new suggestions they're giving me that I'm willing to do. They're stuff that we were already in our plan. So we're doing everything they're recommending and then some. And I believe that where there's been no erosion in the 2 years that we have owned the property, I believe that if we add 2 little retaining walls, very small, as far as height, some people retaining wall could be 50 feet tall. This is like 2 or 3 feet tall. If we add this retaining wall and fill it in and keep our rainwater on our property, and we add drainage, it's only going to help protect the wetlands that we don't know why they're even being protected so much, because they're not prime. So I think our plan to make this usable, that it was designed for in 1972, is way above what the qualification in 1972 was. And sitting here, if I put these things in place, it's going to be better protected than it is now sitting with nothing.
So you're saying that the additional recommendations and concerns, no further vegetation, drainage from Lot 4 must stay on Lot 4, and the other two conditions you've already complied with?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You said that you combined Lot 4 and 5.
I did.
So is this part of Lot 4?
So the only section that's on the agenda tonight that's a concern for conservation and for your board is actually Lot 4. But it's old Lot 4 because we want to get away from talking about Lot 4 and 5 because it's all one lot now. But looking at the plan that Brian Bailey and Associates made, it's divided. There's a line in the middle where it shows the division, but it's one lot now.
And how big did that make it?
I'll tell you.
A quarter acre, half acre?
No, it's much bigger than
About
that.
an acre, because each of the 2 constituent lots were just under half.
Yeah, it's point
0.97.
0.97, right? Correct. Just under an acre.
All right, I was right.
Yep. So, any other questions at this time?
Charlie?
Where's that drainage going to go?
On the plans in the back of the property, it was worded incorrectly, my error. I worded it as a, a dry well. It's actually going to be a drainage trench in the back of the property, oversized to act as a natural dry well, but it's going to be a trench because of the size of it.
And if that trench were to overflow, given some of the,
The water will stay on my property because the retaining walls will be there to hold it back. It cannot leave the property.
you can't work under the wall or anything? I'm only asking only because, I'm sure somebody's gonna look at all that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, but I don't believe the size of that trench with the amount of rain that we've had this past season. And with no erosion and no retaining wall, I don't see it being a problem. Am I a drainage expert? Absolutely not. Am I a site developer? Absolutely not. But considering what we've had over there, and we've watched this lot very, very carefully to see how high the wetlands in the back have gotten, how low they've gotten, how dry they've been, and how much rain we've had. We've done our due diligence on this, and Evan has been there quite a bit and taken a lot of photos. He has seen no erosion whatsoever in 2 years.
Does the planning department agree that the drainage trench as proposed and the retaining wall will be sufficient to protect other property? Do you?
We have not evaluated that.
The plan that I'm looking at right now indicates that the drainage features all drain to a non-existent dry well. Is that correct?
What plan number are you looking at, please?
Well, I'm
Bottom
looking
right
at the
corner?
one that's in our packet, proposed plan 3 dated
Yes. So
9/13/2018.
correct. Plan 3 is the final plan that shows the retaining wall, the drainage pipe, the crushed stone, the drainage stone, and the trench. But my wording was incorrectly. It's listed as a dry well, which is a small, circular, I believe, designed well. This is a drainage trench across the entire width of the old Lot 4.
So along the setback line,
Yes.
to the left on the plan as we look at it, right?
Looking at the plan, to the left, there'll be drainage going down from Woodville Drive from the front of the property to the rear of the property with the proper pitch. And then that'll all be covered with, it'll be laid in crushed stone, it'll be covered with stone, it'll be covered with 6-inch riprap. And then across the back where the trench is, which is, let's say for sake of argument, the dry well, it'll be laid in crushed stone, and it will have 6-inch riprap designed for highways for proper drainage and for that purpose across the property. And then behind me, the wooded area actually goes up. It actually inclines. So my water can't go into that property.
Okay, so I'm just confused as to the difference from a technical standpoint between the dry well feature and the drainage trench. Does the drainage trench convey the water anywhere off your property?
No.
So what does it do then? Does it
It'll
filter and absorb the water into the ground? Or?
It'll, from what I understand, the way it was designed, it'll filter it slowly and manage it slowly so it won't be a flood zone. And then it'll drain naturally to where it is draining now, just draining into the earth naturally. We're not looking at this time to pave this, to cement it, to put walkways in, to build, to do any non-permeable surfaces, nothing like that.
Well, you understand then if you come back here with a plan to further develop, you may well have to develop or include further drainage features, right?
Correct, and I'm also told that if I decide to do anything on this property after tonight's approval or denial, I will then need a CUP again. I'm very clear of that. We don't have we have a short-term plan, like 1 to 2 years,
right,
and we have a 3 to 5, and we're not trying to redesign the neighborhood. And I've already mentioned it to the Conservation Committee and to TRC that eventually we might even want to take the right side of the lot, that's a huge wetlands, and design it as an active viable pond with the Army Corps of Engineers. So that people, when they walk down Woodville, can look in and see, maybe they can see ducks, maybe they can see birds, maybe they can see frogs on lily pads. We don't know. We're not trying to build a illuminated garden with lights and banners everywhere, but we're looking to protect it and make it better than it is now, because both lots were undeveloped, unusable since the 70s. No one's done anything with them, and we bought one a couple of years ago, and we recently bought the other one. We've combined them now, they're one, And like I said, we like the minimal variance permit to to be able to access this need.
Then I just have two more questions, then David, if I can get mine out of the way.
Sure.
The photographs depict, looks like landscape ties with rebar in them. Is that old or new? Is that something you put on the lot recently?
They were just sitting there.
From a previous attempt at a
Nope.
retaining wall?
They
or-
came from somewhere else, and they were sitting there in storage mode,
Oh,
just sitting there. They're not for the site, they won't be used on the site, and they will be removed from the site, but they're just sitting there.
right. And then my final question is, the memo that you referred to from planning staff to the board, it's a chronology of your application process. The first item says, the application was received June 6th, and that you stated at the time that you'd already begun to cut and fill and grade. So was it your understanding that that was permitted at that point?
I called planning and I spoke to Evan and I asked planning what I was allowed to do on that location. And this is what I plan on doing. I want to take down so many trees and I want to put some fill in and kind of get it close to grade.
Right.
And I was allowed to do what I did, and I was told I did not need a permit. Then further down the line, when I brought my plans in, I was then told I would need a CUP and that I would have to follow these procedures. So then I met with, I think, TRC once, and then Conservation, then took their recommendations and went back to TRC again, made the changes, then back to Conservation, did that, and then TRC, I think, again, and now I'm here with planning, I believe.
So my follow-up then is, when did the state do that walkthrough, you said?
The state did the walkthrough June 20th, 2018. I have the original copy of the letter before me tonight, and I'd be glad to leave the original copy with Brandy or Rob, and then you guys can make copies for yourselves for your records, but Evan has it, and he was gonna distribute it through to Conservation last week or two, but I do have the original with me right here.
Is that already part of the file or not?
I haven't seen it, so let me take a look.
Have you previously provided it to the planning department, or?
I previously gave it, Evan has it, so he said a week ago when I was at Conservation, he would distribute it, and everyone on the Conservation Committee knew, so they were to get it from him. And he had it in email from the state, so he has it.
Okay.
But again, I can leave the original copy here.
If you would.
No
just to
problem.
Make sure it's part of the record then.
Just for the record, that's my original copy.
Thank you.
And I'll need it back, thank you.
The chair recognizes Councilman Bounds.
Okay. Here's my question. It seems to me that taking the history of the past couple of years into account and simply making the assertion that a drainage ditch and a retaining wall is sufficient, not that I distrust it, but as I understand the planning director's response, you haven't looked at that issue or made a determination. Do you think that's something we should be doing in this case, just to make sure that we're protecting everybody?
If I could interject before Dean answers that, would that be okay? So I just want to be clear that I'm not putting a building up, taking up open space. But I'm not taking up any open space, which means if we get 10,000 gallons of water on that property tonight, that 10,000 gallons of water is going to stay on that property still and exit the property the way it does now. Nothing will or can change. It's just, I'm not planting trees, I'm not building up a building, I'm not putting up garages, I'm not taking up any open space where the natural rainwater. No, I just want to be perfectly clear so that you understand and the board understands that I'm not taking any open space. I'm actually making the space better. And now if Dean wants to answer, he
I don't think
may.
that answers the councilman's question.
Yeah.
Whether it answered it or not.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay,
Okay?
fair enough.
So, do you understand my question?
I understand your question, and if I could back up just a little bit
Sure.
for some background here. So you'll notice that we do not have a set of staff recommendations
I noticed that.
for you for this application. And what we did do is prepare the history here as we know it, so that you can understand what's been going on and what is going on. And then we were looking for direction from the board on this matter, in that if it's likely that you're going to approve the CUP, then we would recommend that you table it for a month and we will come up with staff recommendations. If you're not prone to grant the CUP, then recommendations probably don't matter at this point in time. But your actual question of, will the proposed drainage ditch as proposed do what is planned? And the answer is, we have not evaluated that. It could very well be just fine, but we have not evaluated it.
So what about the way the plan was originally submitted with the dry well? Was that evaluated?
No. Let me continue on if I can for just a second.
Okay, sorry.
That's right. So, it's true that DES went to the site per a complaint from one of the neighbors. And the work that has been done so far does not violate any of DES requirements, i.e. the fill is not in any of the actual wetlands,
Okay,
okay?
yeah.
Whether it's a prime wetland or not, yes, there's a distinction in DES. They have different levels of wetlands. Under our ordinance, a wetland is a wetland is a wetland. We do not have any distinction between kinds of wetlands. The wetland border has been delineated by his soil scientist at our request, so that we know exactly where the wetlands are.
And it's accurate.
It's done by a certified professional soil scientist, so I have no reason to believe that it is not accurate.
Okay.
And what is in contention here is what we're going to allow to happen in the buffer from the edge of the actual wetland back to 50 feet. Now, this lot.
10 feet or 50 feet?
Yeah, or whatever number you want to choose, right?
Okay.
It is acknowledged by planning that this lot is very, very difficult. Almost all of it is within the buffer. When you go 50 feet from either of the two wetlands, in some cases, the 50-foot buffer overlaps, but for the most part, I mean, there's very little of the lot that is not in the buffer. So it is a lot of record. And there's a reason why since 1972 to 2018 that it has not been built on.
Right.
And I will let that statement just speak for itself. But that is not to say that you can not do anything on the property, that you shouldn't do anything on the property. I'm not saying that, but these are the facts. And so whether you're okay with going 10 feet from the actual wetland, or whether you would like a different number, and exactly how we accomplish that, we'd have to figure that out, or exactly what you want to do as a board. But, you know, this is unfolded in an unfortunate manner, and it got away from us from an enforcement standpoint. It happened quicker than we could respond to it, and in the beginning of June, it was essentially, it is what it is right now. So nothing's been done for almost 4 months now.
Okay. I think that answers my question.
So if we could approve it tonight with some plan revisions, for one thing, right?
You could.
And
I would caution you that you do not have any staff recommendations, because we're not ready to do that yet. But if you wanted to give us some guidance, we certainly could.
I don't want to, here's my thought. I don't want to simply say no to a 10-foot buffer, a 20-foot buffer, or anything less than 50 feet. I just don't want to take a hard line about that. I'm willing to listen to what the proposal is and what the staff recommends with respect to how do we address the drainage issues, how do we address the retaining. So my question to you is, how much time do you need to look at this to come up with some staff recommendations for this project? That would be my question. Is the next planning board meeting that we don't know when it is yet? Is that sufficient?
Luke's on contract.
I think that we probably could, again, with a little bit of direction, I think that we could probably be ready for the November meeting.
For the November meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what kind of direction can the board provide?
Well, the direction that I would provide is to explore the two areas that are going to impact this project, and that is the extent of the buffer, whether 10 feet is sufficient to protect everybody, whether it's a different number, and to tell us whether the drainage and the retaining wall, as proposed, is going to be adequate to protect the other people in the area, to protect property rights. So that would be my direction. Those are the concerns that I'm hearing from the planning department. You'll get your chance.
I'm good.
I promise.
I'm good.
Those would be the areas that I would ask you to take a look at. But then again, we're in October, would be in November that you would be doing this. And if there's something that comes up that you think ought to be addressed, rock and roll with it. I mean, I don't know how else to say that, but that would be my suggestion.
I have a question for you, sir.
Good.
How flexible are you for the border, other than 10 foot? And I'm not saying 50, I'm saying, what, are you flexible?
Well, as Dean stated, it crosses in the middle
Yeah.
very, very consistently. There's not a lot of space there. So we're trying to protect the buffer, protect the wetlands, do what we can to do that. But the property's only, 100-something feet wide, and 100 feet is buffer, and some of it's wetlands. So it's really a tough call.
What you're really saying is that this works with a 10-foot buffer, but you wouldn't know whether it would work with a 15-foot buffer, but you don't think so?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I wanted to gain, with minimal permitting, I wanted to gain the maximum space.
Okay, fair enough.
But to keep in mind that Woodville area has no sewer. And I'm not looking to develop this and build a house tomorrow.
Okay.
But the plans are in place for Woodville to have sewer. And I was at the meeting, I think a week or two ago, and it looks very promising that they're going to offer the residents of Woodville, Rolling Lane and so forth, sewer, which will help this lot, because then I won't need to tie up space with septic. So there's, but this is all way down the road. This is just, tonight is just so I can kind of get in their level, make it accessible to get in and out. And I don't see a problem where if we do it at the 10 feet, just keep in mind one thing, there's no property to the left. It's all wetlands to my left. It's an entire unclaimed area that when it was developed in 72, it was called, I think, it's considered unclaimed, so that the developer wouldn't have to pay taxes on it. And you guys just have it. It just sits there. It's unclaimed. And then behind me is John Remington's property, John and Jackie Remington, and there's a major, major development back there, plans that have been in place for a long time. But that property goes uphill and it's all rock and ledge behind me. So we're not gonna affect that. And then to the right of where we're discussing is already my land. So as long as I keep my rainwater on my land, I feel this is a very positive request tonight.
Okay.
With very, very minimal risk, if anything at all, because we know there's risk with anything, but I think it's very minimal at all. If it's possible, it's very, very minute.
The purpose of joining lots 4 and 5 was to allow you to have one larger lot that you probably could develop at some point. right?
If you combine the lots, you lose the side setback. On each lot, you lose the side setback in the middle. So we combined them.
Okay. How extensive is the wetlands on former Lot 5?
It's pretty extensive in the middle on the right side. It's probably, I'm thinking it's 60% of the lot, right in the middle. And we're not gonna build there ever. That could be on a recorded, as it is tonight. I have no qualms about that.
So the
But
building would be on Lot 4?
if there's ever a building, it'd be on 4. But like I said before, Lot 5, if we go to the Army Corps of Engineers eventually and design a viable pond that can be a retention pond instead of a wetlands, there is a difference. You can get a dredge permit, dredge it, make it a viable living pond. There's nothing in there now, but there's no vegetation, there's no growth, and there's no life in there. So that might be something to do down the road so the neighbors can walk by and look at it when they walk down the street. Those neighborhoods are very, very busy with walking traffic, going back and forth to the lake, people getting exercise, so.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant? Are there any members of the public or butters that would like to be heard?
I'd like to thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Sir, come on up, identify yourself. Oh, I know this guy.
Good evening, I'm Dean Anson, I'm the chairman of the Laconia Conservation Commission.
ID.
And the Conservation Commission has seen this project twice now. And the first time we suggested to Mr. Holmesy that he go back and make it put some more detail into his drawings so that we could better understand what was going on. He came back and he is, as he said, requesting a 10-foot setback from the wetland buffer. And we think that the Conservation Commission voted unanimously to not support that application. It's actually, I think it's the first time we ever unanimously decided not to support an applicant's request because we think in this case it sets a bad precedent. I personally owned a piece of property where there was no wetland setback when they built my house, and now there's a 50-foot wetland setback that I had to deal with when I was putting a porch on my property. So I can appreciate where Mr. Holmesy's coming from. However, we're dealing with the rules and regulations of today. The Conservation Commission went to the site on a very rainy day in, I think it was June, and there's work that's been done there. I don't know who did it, but I think the setback of 50 feet, we agreed several years ago was going to be the number for the city because of the importance of wetlands to maintain water quality and provide habitat, prevent erosion, and that's the reason for the buffer. So as I said, the Conservation Commission voted unanimously not to support this request for a conditional use permit.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hanson?
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'm not being a wise guy, so you know. But is it the Conservation Board's outlook that one size fits all? Is there ever I understand a precedent thing, but is there ever a situation where you say, you know what, we can work with this and not have other people say, oh my God, you did this for this group, why can't you do this for us? Because I would think, well, because your situation's different or something like that. I'm just asking.
No, yeah, I don't think I think that's a very good question. And the answer is when an applicant comes to the Conservation Commission, we don't have any teeth. Our purpose is to review and make recommendations on how an applicant can revise their plan and have less environmental impact to preserve the natural resources of the city. That's our role. It's not to deny, that's what this board does.
Okay, so.
And so,
Follow up on that.
so the answer to your question is, Mr. Smith here came in with a project, had a wetland issue, and I don't think we didn't hold him up. We made some suggestions, and he took our suggestions.
Do you think there's any suggestions that could still be made to this applicant that would maybe make, your board be able to approve it?
I think that if what you were going to do, the answer is yes. If what you're going to do is you're going to ask the planning department to look at this, I think the next Conservation Commission meeting is the 23rd of October. That would be an opportunity for the Conservation Commission to review the staff's recommendations and make some suggestions or,
And perhaps a revised site plan.
yes.
So you people didn't give him any recommendation that night then?
No, we did give him recommendations.
And he didn't adhere to it?
Well, he took the position that he took tonight, which is that I need to, because of the constraints of the two wetlands on either side of where he wants to fill,
Right.
he's, he doesn't have a lot of space. And we made some suggestions, and they didn't fit with his design. So Mr. Holmesy is here with you tonight.
Oh, if he did, you would have highly recommended it?
Well, I don't know if we would have highly recommended it, but, we would have.
May not unanimously shut it down.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Are there any other questions for Chairman Anson?
Is there, I've heard the phrase is, a wetland is a wetland is a wetland, and that's how the city of Laconia treats wetlands, and that there's a difference between prime wetlands and other types of wetlands. And just in terms of those thoughts, I guess that would be, if someone had to move to table this, to make those considerations in light of the Conservation Commission's statements tonight, and to make some recommendations, if possible, with respect to strict adherence to a wetland is a wetland is a wetland.
Absolutely, Counselor, and I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is, under our ordinance, we do not differentiate different kinds of wetlands. We just say wetland, and whatever is delineated by a soil scientist, which has been done here, is our definition of wetland.
My apologies, because that's not what I meant. I understand you perfectly. I think that the planning department works extra hard and diligently to do everything they can to help an applicant through the planning process. And I commend you for that. So don't misunderstand me. I don't think you are just blindly applying rules and regulations to the applicants that come in. I think you're doing your job and you're working diligently with the applicants. So let me be clear about that.
So, I have a question for you, because I'm still the new kid on this block. It seems to me that on the one hand, there's a need for the board to consider special circumstances. Otherwise, people are not going to be able to make the maximum use of their land. And that's the basic driving motivation here. But on the same token, there's the microcosm and the macrocosm, the environment involved. We've heard a lot of talk tonight about habitat and wildlife and things like that. So isn't kind of what the planning board has to do is to weigh the considerations, take into consideration the value of the property or rather the owner or developer's right to develop the property against the potential or certain impacts, shall we say, of the development, right? The Conservation Commission weighs in on this side of the ledger all the time, because that's why you're in the loop. So in this particular case, if I understand it correctly, there's a compromise that's being proposed. If the board were to vote in favor of it, the way it is right now, would you, as a citizen, not necessarily as the chair of the commission, but as a citizen, would you be comfortable with the compromise that was struck here tonight?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the compromise.
If we were to make a decision tonight, for example, and I'm just using this for the purposes of the question, would you as a citizen be comfortable with the process? That is, we weighed the applicant's desire to develop the property and a difficult, parcel to develop against our duty to protect the public or the environment in general. Would you be satisfied with that process?
I think the answer would be dependent on what type of a compromise you proposed.
Okay, that's fair enough.
So if you were to say 10 foot, that's good enough on this site, I would be disappointed. I would be disappointed as a citizen, but I've been interested in environmental issues all my life, and I think to make a decision just to make a decision is not the right thing to do. I think it requires everybody to compromise, and I've been on the same side that Mr. Holmesy is on. I was an environmental consultant for years, and I represented builders who had to, compromise, and I had to help them do that and understand what they're going to lose and what they're going to gain by compromising. So I think if we sit down and we look at options, right, not just say, this is a line in the sand, either take it or leave it. Right. And that's kind of where the Conservation Commission wound up with the last CUP application from Mr. Holmesy. There was a line in the sand. He said, this is what I have to have. And we said, we can't support it.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Bellwood, sure.
So you had mentioned that you voted unanimously not to give the recommendation because you didn't want to have that precedent set. Why? What would the adverse effects be? Because from what I'm hearing, there would be no runoff from the property after the grading is done, which would bring silt and stuff and affect the wetland. I'm also hearing that there are no specific wetland species of plants or wildlife in that area that would be affected. The only thing I can think of that might happen is because of the regrading of that land, there might be less surface area that's running off and feeding the wetland. Mm-hmm. But that should be achieved by that catch basin and the infiltration of the water from that property back in recharging the wetlands. So for me, I understand you don't want to set a precedence and stuff, but I'm wondering if there are no adverse effects, why not do it? I mean, it wouldn't be setting a precedence just saying, hey, we're going to allow everybody to go in to 10 feet from the buffer or from the edge of the wetland. It would be saying, we might support that if you can prove from your design that you are not going to affect that wetland.
Okay, I think that, one of the things we've had here so far, and I don't always consider myself a good listener, but I try, and there are wetland species there. There are. Now, I'm a scientist, so I know, I know different kinds of species. I don't know all the wetland species, but when the wetland scientists came and delineated the property, there are three criteria that had to be met. One is, what's the depth to water? So how wet is the soil? What types of vegetation are there? And we don't have that information. All we had is, we have flags that were put in locations to delineate the edge of the wetlands. And then there were additional flags that were put in to measure where the 10-foot setback from that wetland would be. So we didn't have a study that said there are wetland species or they are not wetland species. We don't have that study. It wasn't done. I can tell you that when I was there in June, there were ducks on the ponds, because I saw them.
Okay,
So-
I think someone had mentioned that the state does not consider it a prime wetland because it does not contain adequate whatever plant species or wildlife.
Okay, so one of the things that would be important to know, if we were going to do a wetland study, is to look at it all 4 seasons. You don't go in the middle of a wet or dry summer and delineate the wetlands and say, that's it. And what we have done in the past is we've asked applicants who did it during the dry time of a summer, delineate the wetlands. We asked them to go back in the spring after the snow melted and redelineate the wetlands. And the delineations were different. I mean, you can imagine. So there is a wetland scientist went out and delineated the wetlands. She did not say, these are the types of vegetation here, these are the types of animals here. That was not her job. Her job was to say, this is the edge of the wetland. And then we come in, then we go 50 feet, and as Mr. Holmesy said, those 2 50-foot buffers, one from, old Lot 5 and old Lot 4, overlap on his property. So now there's fill in the property. So maybe before the fill was put there, during a really wet period, those 2 wetlands overlapped. I mean, you can imagine. They were filling with water, and the water's got to go somewhere if it doesn't go into the ground. We don't know that. So it's, so I think the answer would be to reach a compromise after we get some more information. But right now, I think, certainly, I guess, without additional information, to just make a decision to give a 10-foot setback from the buffer would not be, the Conservation Commission did not support that with the information we have now.
Can't we table this so we can get everyone's opinion? I would feel better with the planning.
Yeah.
Their opinions and their planning, and then everyone coming together.
Well, let's finish the
Personally.
public hearing, and then we'll discuss motions. That's what we would like. I just have one more question for you, Dean, and that is, you said would set a precedent, or a dangerous precedent, or something like that. You don't mean in a legal sense, right?
No.
Okay. So it wouldn't be binding on us as a board the next time an applicant comes in and wants to build within the buffer,
Right.
or develop within the buffer,
Right.
shall we say. Okay.
I mean, I think what we would want to do is we would want an applicant to come before us and say, here's the information, and we say, okay, that's adequate information to make a decision. If we don't have adequate information, then, so.
Understood. Are there any more questions for the Chair of the Conservation Commission? No, none? Well, thank you much for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any abutters here? Sir, would you come on up and identify yourself for the record, please?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Board. My name is Christopher Cost. My wife and I, Debbie Cost, we live at 45 Woodvale Drive, which is directly across the street from the property in question. We've resided in this neighborhood for 22 years, and prior to Mr. Holmesy's purchase of this property, we're very familiar with the property in question, especially in regards to the issue of wetlands. Through the various seasons that we have had, including heavy rain seasons, there are varying degrees of the water level that are contained within those wetlands. We've had very dry times where it's been very, it's dried up, but we also had very rainy seasons and heavy snow seasons where the water was quite substantial. Know that firsthand because we'd walk our dogs to the woods area, all the way over to Pendleton Beach Road. Anyways, the purpose here is when we were notified in regards to this particular project. I guess my wife and I, our first question is what are the intentions of the of this project directly across the street from us? And the reason why I ask that is prior to Mr. Holmesy purchasing this, we had a beautiful view of a wooded area right across the right across the street from where we live. And now that this lot has been taken out with trees and fill coming in. Now we have to look at storage trailers, boat trailers, jet ski lifts, and now 2 storage containers directly across the street from us. This past Labor Day weekend, I had family and friends come visit us for Labor Day weekend, and they were very familiar with our property, the view that we had in our front yard, and the first comment that a friend made to me was, since when does the city of Laconia allow a junkyard to go in and across the street? Because he was looking at the same thing. So we're a little bit confused as to what actually is the intended purpose or the intentions of this property, other than being a storage facility for boat trailers, storage containers, and the like, directly across the street from us, because we're concerned it's going to substantially impact the value of our property. Because if we decide that we ever want to sell this property, again, this is what a potential buyer is going to be looking at when they're out front. I make reference to, again, the conditions as set for the application of a conditional use permit. That, again, was provided to us by the Planning Board. And one of the things is the compatibility with uses of the adjoining or abutting properties in its neighborhood. Well, Woodvale Drive is primarily, or really, it's all residential dwellings. There is no cleared out lots with boat trailers and storage containers. It's this one lot. Also, going onto the website, and again, if ladies and gentlemen here of this planning board could clarify for us, please, the table of permitted uses. And again, I may be off mark here because, again, I'm not familiar with all this, but basically it says water-related dependent uses, which is attachment 2.5. And it's for our zoning purposes, which were shorefront residential. It says watercraft long-term storage. It's not permitted in the neighborhood. Well, there's boats being stored across the street from our house. I make reference to table 2.7, transportation, vehicle storage long-term. The only reason why I bring that up is making reference to RSA 259-122 vehicle, which says every mechanical device in and upon which person and property may be transported or drawn on upon a way, excepting devices that you use exclusively for stationary rails or tracks. And then I refer to RSA 259-113, definition for trailer under the Motor Vehicle Code. It says a trailer shall mean any vehicle without motive power and for carrying property and passengers, wholly in the structure, it being drawn by a self-propelled vehicle, except those run exclusively in the snow or stationary tracks, railroad. So my question to you is, based on those definitions, is this a vehicle storage area now? And then I make reference to table number 2.8, non-residential accessory uses. And again, under our zoning where we live, it's for non-permitted uses, outdoor storage, storage containers, and storage trailers. This is what's being stored on this property. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, please, because you are the folks that would be more familiar with this than I would. And again, I don't know how long-term Mr. Holmesy has the plan on having these trailers and storage containers out onto this property. But again, our concern is the value of our property, but also, you know, the aesthetic view within our neighborhood setting, because it's all residential housing. In regards to, again, going back to the wetlands itself, like I said, there's been varying degrees based on, you know, the various seasons that we have had. But I do know that the two houses that are down from us at 59 and 64 Woodvale Drive, in the area that we are, they're at the lowest point. Whenever we've had heavy rains, their property has been flooded. We've been familiar with the families, the Abdullah family that lived next door to us, and then the Stotler family that lived across the street down from where Mr. Holmesy owns both of these lots. And they've been impacted, again, by the water, snow melt, you know, from the previous seasons. So if Mr. Holmesy's planning on developing this, I mean, he's going to have to take a real serious consideration into developing all of this, especially for proper drainage purposes. I know there has been mention about the possibility of water and sewer coming into our neighborhood area. I've been there 22 years. We've been waiting 22 years. You know, we don't hold much hope that we'll be seeing that for quite some time. But with that said, you know, our concern again is, you know, what is the intention of this property? And again, the non-permitted uses within this particular area, the shorefront residential. And if I'm incorrect, please correct me. Other than that, I have nothing else to say, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much for your time and your efforts. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa.
I have a
Yes,
question.
Dave.
to
Sure.
In reference to this gentleman, how long have those storage units been on that lot?
Oh, they've been on the lot now for a couple months.
Is there a rule of regulation in this town? In order to put a trailer on your lot, you have to get a permit?
No, there isn't. Depends on the zoning. In this case, it is a single-family, SFR, single-family resident. And this lot is a residential use in that they have not applied for any type of commercial use. So therefore, it's a residential property. And trailers, storage of travel trailers, campers, and boats are permitted in that zone. Then we have a further provision in the ordinance that they need to be in the rear of the property, which they are. It's a little complicated, unusual, not complicated, unusual in that, I mean, we're talking about a residential property, but it doesn't have a house on it, so therefore, it's hard to delineate, you know, what's the rear and what's the front. You know, you don't have a front yard in front of the house, you don't have a rear yard, but in this case, they're clearly at the rear of the property, so we feel that they're conforming to the ordinance.
So you can put as many as you want on that lot?
We do, yeah, we do not limit. As long as there is no determination that there's a commercial use, and we have no indication that that is the case, then just as any homeowner could have a boat and a jet ski and a snowmobile on trailers and have them all in their yard, as long as they're in the rear portion of the yard, then that would be conformed to zoning.
But he's saying that they're actually storage trailers, almost like a big shed.
Correct. Right.
Yes, these are storage containers with no wheels on them. I mean,
Be like 40 feet long,
no, they're smaller than that.
20?
They're 20-footers.
I mean, I can't even put a shed in my yard without a permit. They can put a.
Right, well, You can put a shed in your yard as long as you conform to the setbacks. And
Well, it's gotta be under 150 square feet.
right, right. Each one of these containers is under 150 square feet. We are considering them to be sheds.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Cost? Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
for giving us that point of view.
Thank you.
Are there any other abutters here this evening for this project? Are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard? Mr. Smith?
Steve Smith, 245 Shore Drive, Laconia. A couple things. I'm not aware that the city of Laconia has any prime wetlands. Matter of the fact, the state doesn't really have prime wetlands. Each town is responsible, if they want to have prime wetlands, to go through a study, submit it to the state, get it adopted by the state for prime wetlands. Or the town can do their own study and have their own prime wetlands, but I'm not aware of the city of Laconia having any prime wetlands. And secondly, I've done a lot of conditional use permits for wetlands, and your application is pretty specific, and part of that application is to establish the type of wetlands, the quality of the wetlands, whether it has habitat in it, whether it has flood storage capacity. That's all part of the application, so I'm confused tonight that this planning board doesn't have that as part of the application to establish what kind of wetlands is out here. Because it's in your ordinance, it's in your application. So, but we don't have any prime wetlands in Laconia.
Yeah, I thought that was on. Are there any other questions or any questions for Mr. Smith? All right, are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard? Well, sensing none, then I'm going to close the public hearing on this matter at 7:57. You can come back up, sir. Sure. If you're just going to say what you
No,
said before,
no,
that's...
not at all.
Man,
I'm only gonna,
I would like to hear about the storage containers
I'm
and the
gonna-
boats and all that.
I'm gonna touch a lot of subjects that were in opposition from two people tonight. Dean from Conservation, now just hear me out. I'm not here, and I want all these other people to be heard with what's on their agenda, what your agenda tonight. I want you to be here till midnight.
Okay, does that mean you're done now?
Yeah, there you go. Dean made reference that they asked for details that I couldn't comply with. That's absolutely not a true statement. What I presented to the Conservation Committee is what I presented to you. Now, there's a letter from Conservation with their recommendations. There's nothing on there, there's no adverse effects on there stating, this is bad, Richie, change it. Mr. Holmesy, change this. Can you do this? None of that came up. It's in print. So Mr. Dean is absolutely incorrect in that statement. I'm not trying to make him look bad. I hope I'm not offending him, and I'm not here to offend anybody. I'm just trying to do what I can do to better my land and protect my neighborhood. He also states about water quality. There's no public drinking water on the street, so I don't know what water quality he's talking about. Because as far as the wetlands, that's looks like a big swamp pit. There's obviously no water quality in there. Okay, because everything that's...
He was referencing the aquifer that's below the land, which indeed all eventually drains into Lake Winnipesaukee, which indeed is the water source for the city of Laconia. So...
Okay. If
I don't want to get into the technical
Nope,
details.
that's fine.
I'd like to hear about the storage containers and the boats and all
I'm
that.
going to go a couple of things right down the list. As far as so no negative, no adverse suggestions were made. At this time, I don't know why planning hasn't given me, and I don't want to point blame, or why they haven't given me more to say, Mr. Holmesy, you need this and this and this to require, and now they're asking for more time. I did what I was supposed to do with my plans. I made the plans bigger because the plans were not big enough to read without my magnifying glass because I didn't know how to blow it up. So it was a ridiculous looking plan, so I had it blown up and everyone got a bigger copy. I was never asked for any environmental study by a wetlands professional, nor do I believe there's anyone else has been asked for that study. That would set a precedence that if you didn't ask it for anyone else, you shouldn't ask for it for me, or maybe it's not right for me to pay the piper. my neighbor Chris spoke briefly tonight about the level of the wetlands out back. That has nothing to do with me or anyone else. It has nothing to do with this board tonight. I'm not looking to impact the wetlands. I'm looking to reduce my product, my natural rainwater going to the wetlands. So the level that it goes up and down, and it's over there, and it's this huge wetlands area, it's no one's concern because it's just out of reach. What are my intentions with the property? My intentions with the property, I want to let the board know, if my neighbor had the respect for me that I thought he had, he would have came to me and said, Richie, what are your intentions with the property? And I would have went into it. But now that it's been asked, my intentions are to use the property for personal storage during the time period until such time, maybe at some point, that we decide we might be able to apply for another CUP and maybe put up a garage with living quarters. I don't know. Will I have the money for that? Will my partner and I have, I don't know. Is it in the 1 to 2 year deal? No, it's not. It's not in that window. I've told planning that. I've told conservation that. I'm telling you here tonight that. And I told TRC. So we're looking to store personal items such as a jet ski and a boat and whatever there. That's what we're looking to do. As far as the junkyard's considered, and I want to respond to this. The city of Laconia, as a whole, to me, is very dear to me. I've been here since I was a child vacationing, and now I'm fortunate enough to live here. But to insult someone's property because they're in the work in progress mode and I don't have necessary permits and I don't have all the applications made, I can't just go blank and put up a house and make it look all beautified for my neighbor to look at when his friends visit on Labor Day. So I think that was a little, not the right statement to make tonight, but I'm trying to do the correct process, and that takes time. If and when it gets developed, if and when the CUP that's here tonight before you gets approved, if and when that project gets put in place, that's when it will start showing a better curb appeal. I think it's embarrassing that this board and the city has allowed all these developments to go in and have 5-10 year extensions, and they look literally like construction sites with nothing going on, nothing moving around. And I just want to voice my opinion on one situation. Mr. Latenda was here tonight, a developer, and he asked for us.
All right, so
No, I'm going to go into the.
Please, sir, I'm the
Okay.
chair, and I'd like you to stop speaking for a second.
Okay, sure.
We're not going to get into what other applicants said. We just concluded your public hearing. I let you come back up to rebut. As a courtesy, sir, I didn't have to do that.
Okay. I will.
You've answered our questions about the storage containers and the boats.
Okay.
And the abutters' concerns about your future use of the property. So I'm going to ask you to stop right now.
I understand.
All right?
I will.
Are there any questions for Mr. Holmesy from the members of the board? Sensing none, with the public hearing closed, I'm going to ask Mr. Holmesy to return to his seat and ask the board what is its pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm pretty clear about this.
Well, make a motion, sir.
Well, like I said, I don't want to just say no to 10 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet. I don't want to just say no to the project for reasons that we don't have adequate background for. So I think I suggested to the planning department what the areas we need to explore are. And that is the drainage situation, the retaining wall, and issues related to that. There was another consideration, and any consideration that the planning department deems appropriate. I'm not looking for a full-blown study of the wetlands like we've had in past applications, but I do want to get a sense of what the impact is going to be on these wetlands. And so I think that we don't have enough information, and I move to table this until our November meeting, unless you think you need more time, until our November meeting, when you can actually explore these issues and come up with a recommendation, because I think it's important that the planning department give us a recommendation as to what you think the appropriate uses of this property are.
So we have a motion to table to November by Counselor Bounds. Is there a second?
A second.
Claudia is the second. All right, any further discussion on that motion? Mr. St. Clair?
Dean,
Yes.
are you gonna be able to do this in a month? I mean, are you gonna be able to look at the wetland, whatever kind of wetland? Are you gonna be able to look at that as far as, what it looks like in the spring, what it looks like in the summer? I mean, do you have that information? Does the conservation group have that information? Does somebody?
Yeah, I believe that's enough time. The conditions are as they are right now and have been that way. And I was there earlier in the spring when the water was higher, so I know where the water was in the end of May.
Okay.
Middle of May, I think it was the middle of May, so I know where the water was then. So, yes, no, this is plenty of time, and we can do this within the parameters of the existing fill and the proposed retaining walls, and whether they work or don't work to keep the storm drainage on site, or whether they need to be further away from the wetlands. That's essentially the question. Yeah, I think we can do that easily.
Would you be able to do it before the Conservation Commission meeting?
Of the 23rd,
Well, that would be very tight.
possibly, probably not, but I think you may have another meeting in early November that we could make before the next planning board meeting, which is gonna be later in the month than normally, so. I think one way or another, we could get before the Conservation Commission before we get to the planning board.
Is there any other
Get the
discussion,
answer
or?
saying yes. I'm looking at the chairman saying, yes, you think that time frame works for you. Right. Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff or for Chairman Anson? All right. Sensing none, I'll put it to a vote. The motion is to table this application to November. All those in favor indicate by raising their hands. Anyone opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry if I seemed a little coarse, but I was getting looks that maybe we ought to move on, and it weren't helping your case very much, so, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you want to repeat to the audience, because we did have a few people come in late about the applications that we will not be hearing tonight.
Oh, yes, anybody that's here for the Trailhaven development on Barbara Boulevard and 37 Lake Ave, those matters are being continued. They will not be heard this evening.
As well as New Hope.
As well as the New Hope development, New Hope Drive. Those matters have all been continued for various reasons. Stay tuned. All right.
Really know how to clear out a room.
I tried to shower before I came, and didn't have time, I'm sorry.
Well, that explains it.
Yes, it does, David.
Peter, you know how to clear a room, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, you should hear me sing. All right, we are now at, oh, man, did we run out of things already?
Yep, that's it.
9 Messer Street, yes, okay. PL 2018-0084 SU. It's a subdivision on Messer Street, an existing single into 2 separate lots of 10,000 square feet each. And both lots apparently will have 80 feet of frontage, and the proposed use is residential. And I see Attorney Brouillard is here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Resplendent.
Members of the board, Phil Brouillard here for IDH Realty, proposing this infill subdivision.
It's right on Lyford Ave.
Off of Messer
You
Street.
know this?
Basically, it's
Yeah,
two
here.
10,000 square foot lots, recently
Phil?
named.
Could you kind of roll that angled, there you go, that way the camera can see it better, thank you.
Recently named 72 and 82 foot Lyford Street, even though the proposal says Messer Street, the lots are actually on Lyford Street. They are going to be served by municipal water and sewer. Nice addition
Attorney
to.
Brouillard, I forgot to open the public hearing.
Okay.
So let's open the public hearing at 8:11 PM, and you may continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we've gone to TRC1, TRC2. We've met all the requirements. We agree with the staff report that's been before you. Staff has been a pleasure to work with on this matter. The lots have been cleared, and it appears that the connections are going to be made next spring when there's not a deadline for paving and such. So the fees have already been paid to the waterworks, and the developer has gone out of his way to work with Evan to make sure everything's developed out there properly. That being said, it's just a two-lot subdivision, and I'll answer any questions, and I'll pass it on to the staff, and like I said, we agree with their report.
When they cleared the land, did they find a hubcap from a 1976 Ford LTD?
I
Because
don't.
I was going over the railroad tracks once, and my hubcap came off and rolled into that lot, and I searched that lot for 2 days, I must have you know, and I did not find my hubcap.
I
Did it
have
turn
s-
up, Phil?
I have some sad news. It's gone.
So sad. That used to be the St. Joseph's Church lot back in the day, wasn't it?
Yes.
Long time ago. Okay. Thank you. Whoa, where do we start with?
Still got that car?
Yes, go ahead. What?
You still got that car?
No, unfortunately, the car's in the junkyard.
Well, you don't
Gone.
need that hubcap anyway, do you?
Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. St. Clair?
I missed what you said. You said that about the paving, the cut?
Oh, yeah, we're not gonna, the condition of approval is the connections have to be made to the water line and the sewer line. So since these are new connections, we want to do it in the spring when everything's readily available instead of trying to do it in the fall.
What street is that gonna be done?
The connections are on Lyford Street.
Okay, no gas?
No gas.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Staff?
It's a pretty simple subdivision. As Attorney Brouillard mentioned, it's just one lot into two lots. It meets minimum zoning requirements. They will be required to install the utilities before the lots can be sold. There's really nothing complicated about it, so we recommend approval with our standard conditions as listed in the staff review.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to be heard? Any members of the public? This is the property at the corner of Messer and Lyford Street. I guess it fronts on Messer right now. Two-lot subdivision. Sensing that there's no members of the public here, we can close the public hearing, 8:14 PM. What is the pleasure of the board?
I have another question, if I could.
Oh, sure, go right ahead.
Because I don't have the map, and I apologize. But is it two separate driveways, one separate, oh, you don't have it?
separate driveways.
Okay, thanks. And they come right on the Lyford Street?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
It's like being on the board with Columbo sometimes. I just got one more question.
Somebody's got to ask the questions, you know.
I know.
Public demands it.
All right.
So it's two separate driveways, so does he need a driveway permit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to
That's
get
part of
that.
the building permit application.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Does anyone like to make a motion on this one?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve this two-lot subdivision from one lot into two lots. PL 2018-008 4SU, Messer Street, correction of it should be, Phil, it should read lighter rather
Lyford.
than Messer?
Lyford.
Lyford?
Well, I mean, that's just their internal referencing
Okay.
system. I don't think that's important. I just got those from DPW today, and they were 72 and 82 Messer Street. I just thought I'd throw that in, because it has to be put on the plan anyway.
So I recommend approval on this subdivision.
I'm gonna second it.
Well, I just want to amend it. I recommend approval too. I just want to reference each of the conditions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All conditions by the staff.
6. All the conditions as approved by the staff.
Okay, without having to read them all in. Okay, so does the movement agree with the modification that was suggested by Counselor Bounce?
Yes.
All right. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion?
I seconded it.
Oh, I thought you were going to
Well,
ask a
no,
question,
no,
Charlie.
no,
I don't know why I thought that. Is there any discussion? Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising their hands. Opposed? There we go. That motion carries.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Brouillard. Attorney Brouillard, thank you for your time. All right, go back here. I'm going to figure out how to use this iPad eventually. I think I will, anyway. All right, so if I'm not mistaken, we continued late now, right? Did I jump ahead?
Yeah,
So
you
we're
did.
on, I think,
9-3.
Oh, 9-3 is Warren Street. Okay. Again, a public hearing. We're referencing PL 2018-0093SU. It's 19 Warren Street. The owner proposes to subdivide the property into 2 lots. Lot number 1 with an existing house, and lot number 2 would be vacant property for the time being, I'm sure. All right. This-
Public hearing?
Pardon me?
Open the public hearing, please.
Oh, yes. Shall we open the public hearing at 8:17 PM? And Mr. Smith, sir.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Steve Smith and Associates. I'm here representing Jason Ganong, owner of 19 Warren Street, tax map 448, 23123. This property is in the RG zone. It's a total land area of .62 acres, or 26,959 square feet. Property currently supports a single-family residence, which we show on this plan on our proposed subdivision as being on Lot 1. The property fronts on both Warren Street with 149 feet of frontage, and Merrimack Street with 271 feet of frontage. The property has sewer and water. Currently, Merrimack Street is under construction and being reconstructed, and drainage and water and sewer. In this zone, the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet with setbacks of 15 on the front, 10 on the side, 15 on the rear. Minimum frontage, lot frontage is 80 feet with sewer and water. Our proposal is a 2-lot subdivision. Lot 1 would be the lot that would support the existing house, would be 14,815 square feet. Lot 2, which would be the vacant lot, would be 12,144 square feet. Both lots meet all of your zoning requirements. We have already had the water extended to the vacant lot. The Water Department has installed that water. I will need to put those ties and information on the plan. The client, the owner, has retained Busby Construction, who is doing the work out on Merrimack Street to put the sewer connection in. Hopefully that'll be done very soon. Yes, and that was one of the conditions that the Planning Department had suggested. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I think it's a night for infill subdivisions in the city of Laconia. It's a pretty basic proposal. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions for Steve? No questions from the board. Are there any abutters here that would like to be heard? Please come on up to the mic and
My name is Tammy Ryan. I live at 29 Warren Street, right beside it. I guess my question is what is his plans for this? Because as you can see, the land kind of goes, it's wider on Merrimack Street, less wide on Warren Street. If he's gonna build, which end is he gonna build on? Because if he builds on Warren Street, I'll be looking out my bedroom window at a house, you know, right there. So, do you know what his plans are for?
I can answer that.
Okay.
From what I understand from the client, the vacant lot is going to be accessed from Merrimack Street. That's where the water extension has been put. That's where the sewer extension is going to be. The house, more than likely, will be down in this location here, which is the wider section of the property, more conducive to the development. It won't be off from Warren Street, to my knowledge.
Okay.
And it wouldn't make any sense to me to have it off Warren Street.
So they're gonna be taking down all the trees and stuff that are there then?
Well, I hope they won't be taking down all the trees, but they'll have to take down trees that impact wherever the house goes.
Is this intended to be a rental unit?
No. No, the gentleman who owns the property is currently remodeling the existing residence there and then putting that up for sale. And he intends to build another house and put that up for sale.
All right.
It is, as far as I know, not rental property.
Okay. Are there any other, did you have any more questions or any other comments, ma'am?
No, I think my major concern is where, if he was gonna build, where the house would be.
Right.
Because on the, between the house that's there and my house, to put a house in the middle would be very close.
And we all agree.
Right. Thank you. Any other butters here?
Hi.
Come on up to the mic and identify yourself.
Thanks. Teresa Bear, 24 Warren Street. I look right across the street to that vacant lot. And my concern was, I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be a rental for the Laconia residents or whatever, because I've been living there 20 years, and I really don't, I just hate to see a rental properties around my house. Thank you.
I can only tell you what my client has told me. They certainly have a right to build a house and rent it in the city of Laconia, but it's my understanding from my client that they aren't going to be rental properties.
Right. So long as your client owns it.
This is true.
Yes, indeed. The future, well, we don't know.
Single-family home going.
There isn't, I don't believe, much more room to do anything else but put up a home there, yeah, single. Is there any, are there any other butters here tonight? Come on up, sign in.
My name's Tim. I live at 28 Warren Street. I was just concerned on how this might affect the value of the neighborhood. I believe you guys are also subdividing another lot right down the street, so we're starting to cram a lot of houses into a already pretty crammed up area. So that would be my concerns.
I'm subdividing something down the street?
Not you specifically, but you guys actually have another property that you're going to be talking to us about tonight. That's, I think, on the other side of you.
No.
Isn't that also getting?
No, I was confused about that.
Okay.
Not tonight.
Okay. That's all I have.
Right, thank you. Yeah. All right. Are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard? Any other abutters or members of the public that wish to be heard? Sensing none, then we will close the public hearing at 8:24 p.m.
Thank you.
May we hear from the planning staff?
This is similar to the previous subdivision we just saw in that it's a pretty basic subdivision, one lot into two. It is different in the sense that there is an existing structure on the lot. So Steve has made it so that when the plan is recorded, the existing structure still meets required setbacks, and both lots meet minimum zoning requirements for size, frontage. There's still sufficient land area to build on the new lot and not have to encroach on any setbacks. They're working on getting the utilities in. It is a little oddly shaped, but that's what happens when you have these older lots that especially on these triangles between two streets. But they do meet minimum zoning requirements. The only restriction would be that both lots are too small to be anything more than a single-family home. The board and the city can't put any restriction, unfortunately, on whether or not it's rented, but that is a single-family home at this point is really all they can put there without a variance, so that at least the abutters can be sure of that. If the developer for some reason did want to put something bigger, he would need to come up for a variance. The abutters would be notified again.
Right. Okay,
So we recommend approval.
all right, well, thank you very much.
I just have one quick question. What determines the difference between a single-family home and a multifamily home? I know two different families, but is it by the bedrooms?
So we have a definition for a single-family home, a duplex, and a multifamily. A single family is a single family, a duplex is 2 units, and a multifamily is 3 or more. And generally, we determine a living unit by the addition of a kitchen.
Okay. So it's only established that it can only be, on that particular lot, a
Because-
single-family home, but it's not restricted how many bedrooms?
No.
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 Because of sewer.
We don't, I have no idea what the sewer, when they see the building plans, they might require a certain size, I don't know. But there is no restriction in our zoning for that.
Good question. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you very much. So, what is the pleasure of the board regarding this application?
I recommend that we accept this and approve it as written with, that it is going to be only approved as a single-family home for the future, when he gets it subdivided. And that it's PL 20180098, 3 SU 19 Warren Street, subdivision property with 2 lots with 1 existing home, and lot number 2 being a vacant lot. And all staff's recommendations.
All right, is there a second? I have a question for the maker of the motion, and that is, you made reference to a restriction on what would eventually be built on what is now a vacant lot. I don't think that's properly part of the motion, because we can't limit that. We're saying, if I understand it correctly, that the lot would probably not support anything other than a single-family home. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. The planning board can't limit the density. The density is prescribed by the zoning ordinance, which is relieved by the zoning board.
Right. So if we just take that reference out, I mean, I think
Well,
the
I thought she
butters
said
have
it
heard.
can only be a single-family
At
home.
this time, without a variance, it can only be a single family.
Right.
I just wanted to make that clear so that the
Okay.
abutters knew.
All right.
I just didn't want this board to vote on something that's really not in our purview. All right, so we have a motion. I'm sorry, was there a second?
Right here, no second.
All right, and Mr. St. Clair, is there any discussion on the motion? Well, sensing none, then I would ask all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising their hands. Are there any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously.
I just have one issue.
Sure.
This is in the RG zone, and it says you can have 6 units per acre. So how does that relate that to only a I know that's what they want to build as a single-family house.
Yep, that's a good question. So 6 units per acre, what we do to determine that is we divide the square footage of an acre by that number of units, and then the lot has to have a minimum of that square footage per unit. So
Yeah.
44,000 divided by 6 would be 7 something, and that lot's gonna have.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to
Yep, so
make sure that we
so
weren't.
that lot will have 12 something,
Thank
which
you.
is short of 14, which means they can't have more than one.
There's too much math involved.
Tell me about it. No one
I
hired
just
me for
wanted to
my
make
math
sure
skills.
that we were
Must be
doing
at
something
7
right,
something.
that's all.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Smith. Thank you, members of the public.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Rob. All right, so, am I correct now that we've gotten through all that? Why can't I ever go back on this thing? Okay, there we go. Gee, some crow. All right, that leaves us, I believe, at 11. Am I correct?
Yes.
New business.
All right, so, does anyone have any new business they'd like to bring?
I have a question.
Sure.
You gonna steal my thunder?
Is it new?
Am I stealing it? No,
Oh, okay.
no. I have a question about a letter we had discussed. I don't see a letter, so I don't expect a letter.
Letter,
Water Department.
it's not ready yet. I haven't talked to Seth, so I'm not sure of the status, but I'll touch bases with him.
Okay, thank you very much.
The water department?
Hey, I asked the question and
All
got
right.
the answer.
Yeah,
I don't
if
wanna
you're
know-
privy to things
I
the
don't wanna
chair is
know
not
the
aware
words
of.
about it.
I understand that the politicians at this end of the table might have some
No, no.
insight
No, no, no,
that the
no,
chair
this-
doesn't have, this lowly
No,
underpaid
no,
public
because it-
servant.
Because the letter is self-explanatory and there's no need for me to get into something that's not my forte.
Okay. So, does anyone else have anything about even slightly related to new business? I have one thing, and Dean and I have been talking about the need to make some board appointments, some committee appointments. The one that I'm most concerned about are the committee appointments to the Master Plan Steering Committee, which is this board's purview to make, or the chair's, I'm not sure. And pursuant to that, of course, the question was whether Mr. Contardo wished to continue as a member of the board, because he's also a member of that committee. And it's an important committee, and we would like to populate it so that we can continue with whatever momentum we have at this point in the master plan process. I spoke to Mr. Contardo on the phone the other day. He said he did wish to continue as a member of the board and on that committee, and then stated he wouldn't be at this meeting because he would be out of the country. Now, he hasn't been to a planning board meeting, I don't believe, since the June meeting, which was not coincidentally, I suppose, my first meeting as chair. So I'm looking for guidance from the board as to what we might do. I am told by Mr. Trefethan that there is a process for removing someone from the board for failure to attend a certain number of meetings. I am loath to do that to Mr. Contardo, who served as a member of this board since I was here the last time, so since at least, 2010, maybe before that, and also served as chair immediately prior to me. My sense is that we ask him to come next meeting and tell us if he wants to stay, and if so, whether he intends to be a member of both the planning board and this committee, or whether he's done with us. It's hard to tell, other than what I'm telling you, is he told me on the phone that he would like to continue.
I have a simple solution. Don't you love simple solutions?
Not from you.
Okay. Here's the simple solution. I don't want to get in, I've been on the board with Bill since he was, since I started with my first term with the council, and this is my third term. I don't want to get into attendance, not attendance, who goes and who doesn't. We always have a need for people on the planning board. I don't know what our staffing level is right now, but we're still not a full board, are we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we're full.
We're full.
Okay. So I don't want to get into any of that. I do want to move forward with the zoning stuff. We've lost a little momentum because of this issue. So my suggestion is that we go forward with the planning committee. I think you've agreed to serve on it. I think Sarah Jenna's agreed to serve on it. There's no reason.
Gary Dion is the third.
But that's not a member of the board.
No, I understand.
So there's no reason why we just can't have Bill remain as a member of the committee. If he doesn't come to meetings, he doesn't come to meetings. As long as Sarah comes to meetings and you come to meetings, we can move forward with this. So I don't think it's an issue. We just make sure that we got two that we know are going, and that would be you. You've already agreed to that. And I'm talking to you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And Sarah Jenna. and Gary Dion, which I'm happy to have as a member. Just schedule a meeting and get this thing rocking and rolling. I'm in it.
Well, what have thou to say to that? Mr.
That's fine.
Trefethan? Is that fine?
That is fine.
Okay.
Simple solution, simple answer.
Yeah, I like those. I actually trust you now, David. Thank you.
That's a mistake.
I know. All right, so we don't really need to do anything then. I thank the board for its indulgence on that. What about the actual appointments that still do need to be made?
I think that's your purview, Mr. Chair.
Well, does that require board vote?
No.
All right. So, do we have enough, room to make the three? Well, who would be the appointments we'd make tonight?
It'd be you, Sarah, which we've already done in a previous meeting, and Bill in a previous meeting. So it really is just putting you on there, and then and Mr. Dion as an additional member of the public.
Do either of those votes have to be recommended to the council, or?
No.
No?
No, strictly this.
Well, then then I'm with, you said that Ms. Jenna has already been appointed?
We did that in
Yes, I think
previous
you-
meeting, and I have confirmed with her within the last week that she still wants to do that.
Well, then, if there's no objection from any members of the board, then I'm going to appoint myself and Gary Dion to the Master Plan Steering Committee, and and then we'll see what happens going forward. How's that?
That's fine.
Does that work? Mr. Dion was the chair of the planning board when I left in the 2010, and he's well-versed in things, and he's probably a lot better at this than I am, or I ever will be, so. All right, is there any other new business?
I have a, what I'll call a liaison report from the city council.
Well, I think we're there, just as soon as I confirm there's no old business, right?
No old business.
Does the planning department wish to be heard?
I do have a report for you, but I'll wait till after the liaison reports.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Sir.
You're up.
Okay, this is not formal yet, but there's been discussion about code enforcement among the city council members, and that's going to be coming up at a future meeting. So, since it's going to intimately involve the planning board in some respect, I just wanted to give advance notice to everybody that may be an issue that will be coming up in the future.
I don't know what that means.
Neither do I.
Okay? There have been concerns about code enforcement.
Lack of or too much?
Lack of code
Okay,
enforcement.
all right.
And that's going to be addressed by the city council. I don't know what the outcome will be with that, but I wanted everybody to be aware that was a concern from some members of the city council.
How was it brought to the council, if you don't mind me asking?
One of the councilors brought it up.
Okay, it wasn't from the city manager, or?
No, it was raised by a council member.
Okay. Thank you for the heads up. Is there anything else that you'd like to report as the official liaison to the city council?
No.
Thank you, Counselor, for that.
Under liaison reports, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, certainly.
Just want to remind the board that we should have, we have not had for some time, but we should have a member of the planning board act as liaison to the Conservation Commission, and they are requesting that we appoint someone. We don't necessarily have to do it tonight, but maybe think about it, and at the next meeting, we can basically go to the conservation meetings. You would not be a voting member, but you could put your 2 cents worth in, and you would certainly help on this end when things come from the Conservation Commission back to the board, be another voice to explain what's going on at the Conservation Commission.
Wow.
How often does that meet?
They are 1 to 2 times a month, usually on Wednesdays, around 5:30 or 6 o'clock.
1 to 2 times?
Yeah.
But
It's
very
kind of
short.
driven by activity.
And they're fairly short meetings, right?
I don't know.
Depends
I
on
don't
the
think they're,
subject.
super long, but.
Right, well, it's like, kinda like us, right?
Yeah.
Okay, super.
I'm maxed out, so I can't take anything else on at this point.
Like I said, we don't need to make a decision tonight, but if we can
Any
collectively think about
volunteers?
it, and then,
I just have a question. I mean, I'm new on this too. My term runs out March 2019. Does someone automatically take that term over?
no, you'll be notified, when it gets closer, as to whether you want to, be appointed for an additional 3 years. And, if you say yes, then, the city manager's office will take care of getting that before the city council to, and in your case, you're an ex officio member, you're appointed by the city manager, so he will take that, but, yeah, they'll take care of that. I mean, it's a yes or no on your part, or whether you want to continue or not, and if you do, then.
So the only reason I'm asking that question is related to Dave's input of him talking about Bill not attending most of the meetings. I'll only be a resident here for 6 months after March. So does that disqualify me?
What does that mean? You're
I'm only
leaving?
gonna live here 6 months and 6 months in Florida.
You're gonna follow the warm weather.
So you're here 6 months and gone?
As long as you're here 180, whatever days it is
We had
supposed to
that
be,
before?
then,
Doesn't disqualify you
No.
per se,
No.
if you decided to change your residency to
if you're
Florida.
legal, if you're a legal resident of Laconia, then you can be on the board.
I'll still have an address
Yeah.
and paying taxes in Laconia.
Right.
But
You'll-
I
you'll
won't
be-
be living here full-time.
But you'll be a resident here,
You'll
right?
have to decide if you're a resident or not.
It goes by your vote.
Where do you want to vote?
Well, that I don't know yet.
Yeah, okay. then that-
Well, now you know the parameters of
Now you know.
the
You gotta make
decision.
the
We'll decide that
decision.
when you get to there.
I'm
It
not
really
gonna
is-
ask you how you're gonna vote.
It's gonna be a decision then.
Yeah.
It's really a matter of where you declare your residency. If you decide to declare your residency elsewhere, then at that point in time, you would,
Come March, I would probably know that.
okay, then that'll be fine. We'll deal with it then.
Maybe the weather.
Okay. Any other liaison reports?
No.
The CIP did meet, the,
Yes, we had the
CIP committee
we had
did
the
meet.
kickoff meeting, and we will have the next meeting starting presentations on the 10th of
October, the 10th and the 23rd, I think, this month, if
Yes.
I'm correct. So, all we've had is the introductory meeting, the establishing meeting, or whatever they call it, so. All right, are there any other?
Yes, planning board.
Yes, planning board,
Planning department report.
planning department report, yes, sir.
So I have mixed news for you. It's good news and it's bad news, and all depends on how you look at it. But anyway, our able assistant planner, Brandy, will be leaving us. The 10th of October will be her last day. She, as you know, has a background in historic preservation, and she's going to be returning to that and working for the state to do historic preservation. So, although we are very sad to see her go, we also wish her well and realize that, pursuit of her passion. So that's the happy part. The sad part is I get to do more work, so.
There's no downside, in
So
other
this is
words.
your la-
Well, that's
This is your
good.
last meeting?
It is.
Yes, this will be her last.
Well,
planning
there are a few other meetings that I will be attending, but this is my last planning board meeting.
Unless we
I
hit
still
it with
got
an
some
injunction.
CRC and special events. And I got a week to work through.
Brandy, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed serving on this board with you here. Thank you so much.
I
Let's get
appreciate
an
that.
injunction and prevent her from leaving for a couple of years.
Oh, no. I mean, everyone. No.
An empty threat, I assure you.
I
David
do-
wouldn't know how to get an injunction.
Well, I mean, I can make my own empty threats, guys, because I may not be an employee, but I am still a resident and taxpayer of the city.
Right.
So if I want to come and, I don't know, sit in the audience and heckle you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, please do.
Or get appointed to the board.
Yeah, that's
There you
true.
go.
There you go. There's some committee work coming up,
There may be
absolutely.
an opening in March.
And you will be commuting now, of course.
I
so
will,
that's
but I-
the only
it's-
downside I can hear.
That's no big deal. I used to drive
I
to
saw
Boston.
I'm excited
I
for
saw
you,
something-
thank you.
Appreciate that.
When's your farewell day? When are we dropping in to say?
The 9th.
We love you and we miss you? and-
Any day you want.
The 9th.
Okay.
I'll take compliments any day.
Is the signboard going up yet?
And gifts.
I don't know why there's not confetti and a disco ball,
I
Charlie.
told us you should put a signboard up with an actual countdown, hour and minutes and seconds.
No, I want to make it clear that I'm very excited to go back to historic preservation work. It really is what I enjoy most. I'll be working on the National Register program and the Historic Tax Credit program for the state, which is really exciting for me. But I want to make it clear that everyone I've worked with here, my coworkers especially, planning, board members from many different boards, have made the last 5 years, which, were difficult at times for a number of reasons, but they've made it so much better than anywhere else I've ever worked. I've been really, really lucky. And really the biggest downside is leaving everyone that I've worked with, so.
But is your office gonna be in the basement or above ground?
I'm gonna be in the second floor. When it snows, I'll still be able to see out the window.
So that's like a promotion from
I
the basement
know.
up to the second floor.
Right.
It's so funny.
Walking by.
It's so funny because in preservation work, I've worked in Mass, I worked in Texas, and same thing in the New Hampshire, in the Concord building. The archaeologists always end up in the basement, so I'm good. I'm covered.
Right. Many years ago, I participated in a couple of digs when I was a student, and I am still certified by Scrapman, site excavation and survey. And I haven't been at an archaeological site in 20 years, but
New Hampshire has a great program for that.
yeah, there's a lot of volunteer effort in that, so. All right, well, again, on behalf of the board and all the prior chairs and board people that you've worked with, thank you very much, and good luck and Godspeed, and we will miss you.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other business to bring before the board? All right, sensing none, I would entertain everyone's favorite motion.
Let's get the heck out of here.
The motion to get the heck out of here, otherwise known as
And
the
I
motion
second that.
to adjourn, which has been seconded before the chair could even state it. Is there any discussion on this motion? Sensing none, all those in favor, you can say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned at 8:47.
How are we gonna plan the next meeting?
Oh, yes, well, it'll be duly noticed, I would imagine.
We may have to just email everyone and find a date that we can be sure we can get a
Yes,
quorum.
that's why I was worried about this room. It's being
What's
used
the
by
matter with